My name is Antonio, and at 67 years old, I never expected to wake up completely bald on the most important day of my daughter Jessica's life. After losing my wife to cancer and raising our daughter alone, I built a business empire worth millions. That morning, I found a cruel note from my soon-to-be son-in-law, Derek. "Now you have the look that suits you, you ridiculous old man." The betrayal cut deeper than the loss of my hair. Little did he know I was about to transfer $120 million to them that very day. Let me tell you where this story goes. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey of betrayal and redemption, because what happened next changed everything. To understand the magnitude of what happened that day, you need to know where I came from. I wasn't born into wealth or privilege. My parents were Italian immigrants who arrived in Boston with nothing but hope and determination. My father worked 3 jobs, and my mother sewed dresses until her fingers bled. They instilled in me the values of hard work, integrity, and family above all else. I started my real estate business when I was 23, with a single rundown apartment building in a forgotten neighborhood. Everyone said I was crazy to invest there, but I saw potential where others saw decay. Over 40 years, I transformed that single property into the Rossi Real Estate Group, with holdings across 14 states. I built everything brick by brick, deal by deal, with honesty and grit. The true light of my life was my beautiful wife, Amanda. We met in college when I was working nights as a janitor to pay tuition. She was this brilliant art history major who could have had any guy on campus, but for some reason, she chose the rough around the edges guy who smelled like floor cleaner. We were married 42 wonderful years before ovarian cancer took her from us. Jessica was only 12 when her mother died. Jessica was the spitting image of Amanda, with the same chestnut hair and intelligent green eyes. After we lost her mother, raising her became my sole purpose. I poured everything into giving her the life Amanda would have wanted for her. The best schools, music lessons, summers in Europe studying art like her mother loved. Maybe I overcompensated, trying to fill the void her mother left. Perhaps I indulged her too much, never wanting her to feel the financial struggle I had known. As a teenager, Jessica was sweet and thoughtful, calling me every day during her first semester at college just to check in. She graduated with honors from Princeton, with a degree in art history, just like her mother. I was so proud watching her accept that diploma, thinking of how Amanda would have beamed seeing our girl follow in her footsteps. Everything changed when Jessica met Derek Wilson 3 years ago. He was 35, 5 years older than her, and worked at an investment firm in Manhattan. On paper, he seemed perfect, handsome, well-educated, articulate, from what he called old New England money. Jessica was instantly smitten. I remember the first time she brought him home for dinner. He arrived in a sports car that cost more than most people's homes, wearing a watch worth at least $50,000. He was polished, almost too perfect, like someone playing a role. At first, I tried to be open-minded. Jessica was happy, and that's what mattered most. But little things started bothering me. The way Derek subtly corrected Jessica at dinner, how he made snide remarks about my new money status when he thought I couldn't hear. The way Jessica's phone calls to me became less frequent and shorter when she moved in with him. Within 6 months of meeting Derek, Jessica's personality began to change. My down-to-earth daughter, who once volunteered at homeless shelters, suddenly became obsessed with status and appearances. She traded her modest wardrobe for designer clothes and began talking about the right people and the right neighborhoods. It was like watching my daughter disappear behind a mask that Derek had crafted for her. When they announced their engagement after dating for only 8 months, I tried to be supportive despite my reservations. I threw them an extravagant engagement party, inviting 400 guests to the rooftop of one of my Manhattan properties. I remember Derek walking around like he already owned the place, telling my business associates about changes he would make to my company once he was part of the family. After that night, my concerns grew too strong to ignore. I hired Thomas Reeves, a private investigator who had worked for my company on several occasions. I asked him to look into Derek's background, his family, his finances, anything that might give me insight into the man my daughter planned to marry. I wasn't proud of this decision, but my instincts were screaming that something wasn't right. 2 weeks later, Thomas delivered a thick folder to my office. What I learned turned my stomach. Derek's old New England money was a complete fabrication. His father was a mid-level insurance salesman in Rhode Island, not the shipping magnate he claimed. Derek had been fired from 3 previous finance jobs for ethical violations. He had mountains of debt, maxed out credit cards, and a gambling problem he kept well hidden. Most disturbing of all, he had a pattern of dating wealthy women, extracting money from them, and moving on. I sat in my office until midnight that day, staring at those documents, wondering how to protect my daughter without losing her entirely. If I showed her this evidence, would she believe me, or would Derek convince her it was all a lie constructed by her controlling father? The thought of her ending up with a man like this made my heart ache, but I feared pushing too hard would only drive her further into his arms. The 8 months leading up to the wedding were the most stressful of my life. Jessica and Derek hired an exclusive wedding planner and selected the Rosewood Estate, a historic mansion overlooking the Hudson River, as their venue. The costs were astronomical. $300,000 for the venue alone, $75,000 for flowers, $40,000 for the cake. I agreed to pay for everything, hoping my generosity might somehow keep me in Jessica's life. Every time I visited their apartment to discuss wedding details, I noticed how Derek dominated the conversation while Jessica nodded along. When I suggested a more modest celebration, Derek laughed and said, "Antonio, when you have money like yours, why live like you don't?" Jessica didn't even defend the values I had raised her with. 3 months before the wedding, I tried one last time to talk to Jessica alone. I invited her to lunch at the small Italian restaurant where we used to celebrate her birthdays when she was growing up. "Sweetheart," I said carefully, "are you sure Derek is the right person for you? Marriage is forever." Jessica's face immediately hardened. "Dad, I know you've never thought anyone was good enough for me. Derek loves me and wants to build a future together. Why can't you just be happy for us?" "I want to be," I told her, reaching for her hand across the table. She pulled it away. "But sometimes I don't recognize you anymore. You used to care about helping people, about making your mother's memory proud. That's so unfair," she snapped. "Bringing Mom into this. She would have loved Derek. He's ambitious and forward-thinking, not stuck in the past like you." The comment stung like a slap. Amanda would have seen through Derek in minutes. She had an incredible ability to read people, a gift our daughter seemed to have lost. "Jessica, has Derek asked you about your inheritance?" I asked directly. Her eyes widened slightly before she controlled her expression. "What kind of question is that?" "God, Dad, you're so paranoid. Not everyone is after your precious money." But I saw it in her face, a flicker of recognition. He had been asking. The next blow came during the rehearsal dinner. I had spared no expense, booking a private room at Le Bernardin, one of New York's finest restaurants. After several glasses of champagne, Derek became less guarded. I stepped out to the restroom and, on my return, paused outside the half-open door when I heard my name. "Antonio is exactly what you'd expect from someone with his background," Derek was saying to his best man and another friend. "All that money and still no class. Did you see those gold cufflinks?" Practically screaming, "I used to be poor." They laughed, and to my horror, I heard Jessica's laugh among them. "He means well," she said, but there was a dismissive tone I had never heard from her before. "After the wedding, we'll only have to see him on holidays." I stood there, frozen, as Derek continued. "Once we get the inheritance transferred, we can buy that place in the Hamptons. Your dad won't approve, but who cares? It's not his money anymore." I slipped away, returned to the table a few minutes later, pretending I had heard nothing. Throughout the remainder of the dinner, I watched my daughter laughing with these people who mocked her background, her father, everything we had been through together. The next morning, I met with Harold Goldman, my financial advisor and attorney for the past 30 years. I had previously planned to transfer $120 million to Jessica after the wedding, approximately 1/3 of my total worth. It was a generous wedding gift that would set them up for life while ensuring Jessica would have financial independence within her marriage. "Are you sure about this amount, Antonio?" Harold asked, clearly concerned. We could structure it differently. Perhaps a trust with conditions. No changes yet, I told him. But I want everything prepared for a possible alternate scenario. If I call you tomorrow with the phrase, Amanda would not approve, I want you to halt the transfer immediately and implement Plan B, the trust that only activates if certain conditions are met, Harold confirmed. Exactly. Jessica would still be taken care of, but Derek wouldn't have access to any of it without my explicit approval. Harold nodded gravely. I hope it doesn't come to that, Antonio. So do I, Harold. So do I. The night before the wedding, Jessica stayed at my penthouse as per tradition. We barely spoke. She was constantly on her phone, texting with Derek or the wedding planner. Around 10 o'clock, she emerged from her room, holding 2 glasses of scotch. A toast, she said, handing me one, to new beginnings. The gesture surprised me. It was the first warmth she had shown me in months. We clinked glasses and I took a grateful sip. Dad, she said, sitting beside me on the sofa, I know you and Derek haven't always seen eye to eye, but after tomorrow, we're all family. I need you both to try harder. Of course, sweetheart, I said, feeling a momentary hope. Maybe things would improve after the wedding. Maybe once Derek felt secure in his position, the manipulation would stop. We finished our drinks, and Jessica hugged me goodnight. I love you, Dad, she said, and for a moment, she was my little girl again. I love you too more than anything, I replied. I went to bed feeling strangely drowsy but more at peace than I had in months. My last thought before drifting off was that perhaps I had misjudged Derek. Perhaps everything would work out after all. I couldn't have been more wrong. The morning of Jessica's wedding day should have been one of the happiest of my life. Despite all my concerns about Derek, I went to bed the night before, trying to focus on the positives, on seeing my beautiful daughter walk down the aisle, on fulfilling my promise to Amanda that I would be there for all of Jessica's important moments. I woke up feeling unusually groggy around 7:30, much later than my typical 5 a.m. rise. My head pounded, and my mouth felt desert dry. Something wasn't right. I had only had one scotch the night before, certainly not enough to cause this level of discomfort. I sat up slowly, rubbing my temples, and swung my legs over the side of the bed. As I stood to walk to the bathroom, I felt an odd sensation, a lightness to my head that I couldn't place. Still half asleep, I shuffled to the bathroom and flipped on the light. The face that stared back at me from the mirror wasn't mine. Or rather, it was mine, but horribly transformed. I was completely bald. Every hair on my head had been shaved off, including my eyebrows. For 67 years I had maintained a full head of thick silver hair, my one vanity in life. Amanda had always loved my hair, running her fingers through it in our quiet moments together. For several seconds, I couldn't process what I was seeing. I raised a trembling hand to my scalp, feeling the unfamiliar smoothness. This couldn't be happening. Not today, of all days. Then I noticed something on the bathroom counter, a folded piece of paper with my name written on it in unfamiliar handwriting. With a sense of dread, I opened it and read, "Now you have the look that suits you, you ridiculous old man. Consider this a preview of your new role. Silent, obedient, and irrelevant." The note wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. There was only one person who would do this to me on this day. Derek. I sank down onto the edge of the bathtub, my legs no longer able to support me. The physical violation was shocking enough, but the calculated cruelty of the timing made it clear this was more than a prank. It was a message. You don't matter anymore. You are a joke to us. The scattered pieces began to fall into place. The unusually strong drowsiness after just one drink. Jessica bringing me the scotch. Had my own daughter drugged me so her fiancé could humiliate me? I couldn't believe she would participate in something so cruel, but the evidence pointed to her involvement, at least as an accomplice. The wedding was scheduled for 2 p.m., giving me just over 6 hours to somehow make myself presentable. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called the one person I knew I could trust, my oldest friend, Michael Turner. Michael and I had been friends for 40 years, starting as competing developers before becoming partners and eventually close friends. He was the godfather to Jessica, and had been my rock after Amanda died. "Michael," I said when he answered, my voice breaking. "I need your help." "Antonio, what's wrong? You sound terrible. Can you come to my apartment right away? Something's happened. Please don't tell anyone, especially not Jessica." "I'm on my way," he said without hesitation. While waiting for Michael, I searched my apartment for any evidence of what had occurred. In the trash can in Jessica's room, I found hair clippings, silver gray, undeniably mine. So it had happened here, while I was unconscious in my own home. Michael arrived 20 minutes later. When I opened the door, his jaw dropped. "My God, Antonio, what happened to you?" I wordlessly handed him the note and watched his expression change from shock to fury as he read it. "Derek did this? That piece of garbage. And the wedding is today? What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted, fighting back tears for the first time since Amanda's funeral. "I can't go like this. I can't have hundreds of people staring, whispering, pitying me." Michael put his hands on my shoulders. "Listen to me. This is exactly what he wants. For you to hide away in shame. Don't give him that satisfaction." "But Jessica," I said, my voice breaking, "how could she be part of this?" Michael's expression softened. "We don't know that she was. Derek could have acted alone. She brought me the drink, Michael. It had to be drugged." "Maybe she didn't know what was in it," Michael suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. "Either way, you need to be at that wedding. Not for Derek, not even for Jessica right now, but for yourself. To show them they can't break you." I knew he was right, but the thought of facing hundreds of guests with my new appearance made my stomach churn. "The photographs, Michael. These will be Jessica's wedding photos forever. Even if she wasn't involved, how can I ruin her day like this?" Michael thought for a moment. "We have options. We could try to find a high-quality wig on short notice. Or you could embrace it, maybe with the right hat. A hat at a formal wedding, not just any hat. Something distinguished. I'm thinking a classic fedora. With your bone structure, you could actually pull off the bald look with the right accessories." It was a small comfort, but I appreciated his effort. "First, I need to know for sure what happened here last night," I said, my business instincts kicking in despite the emotional turmoil. "My building has security cameras in all the hallways." I called down to Jorge, my building's head of security for the past 15 years. "Jorge, I need to see the security footage from last night, specifically anyone entering or exiting my apartment between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. "Right away, Mr. Rossi. I can send it to your phone." While waiting for the footage, Michael helped me clean up the remaining patches of hair the clippers had missed. "You know, Antonio, bald can be distinguished. Think about it. Sean Connery, Patrick Stewart. All those guys look great without hair." I attempted a smile at his kindness, but couldn't manage it. My phone pinged with a message from Jorge containing a video file. We sat down to watch it together. The footage showed Jessica leaving my apartment at 10:52 p.m. Then, shockingly, at 1:17 a.m., Derek entered using what appeared to be Jessica's key. He left at 1:46 a.m. with a small bag in his hand. The evidence was indisputable. "That settles it," Michael said grimly. "Jessica may have drugged your drink, knowingly or not, but Derek acted alone in cutting your hair. She might not even know yet." The realization brought little comfort. Whether Jessica knew about Derek's plan or not, she had still chosen this man, had still been complicit in changing into someone who could treat her father with such disrespect. "What now?" I asked, feeling the weight of the decision before me. "Now," Michael said firmly, "we get you ready for a wedding. And I think it's time to activate whatever contingency plan I know you must have in place for the inheritance." I nodded, picking up my phone to text Harold. Amanda would not approve. His response came seconds later. "Understood. Plan B activated." With that decision made, I felt a strange calm descend over me. The path forward was clear now. I would attend my daughter's wedding with dignity. I would witness her marry this man. And during my toast, I would reveal the truth to everyone present. "You're right, Michael," I said, standing straighter. "Let's find me a fedora. The best damn fedora in Manhattan." By 1:30 p.m., Michael and I arrived at the Rosewood estate. I wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo and, as planned, an elegant gray fedora that Michael had somehow procured on short notice. I'd also purchased natural-looking eyebrow pencil, following a tutorial on Michael's phone to create the illusion of eyebrows that wouldn't immediately wash away with sweat or tears. The estate was transformed with thousands of white roses and crystal decorations that caught the early autumn sunlight. Under different circumstances, I would have appreciated the beauty of it all, the culmination of months of planning and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, it all seemed like an elaborate stage set for the final act of a tragedy. As I stepped out of the car, I could feel eyes turning toward me. Most guests knew me as the silver-haired, distinguished father of the bride who was funding this entire spectacle. The hat was out of character, but I held my head high as Michael and I made our way through the garden toward the ceremony site. Clara Johnson, the wedding planner, hurried over to me with a look of controlled panic. "Mr. Rossi, thank goodness you're here. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Jessica has been asking for you." "I'll see her now," I said firmly. Clara led me to a suite in the mansion where Jessica was preparing with her bridesmaids. When I entered, the room fell silent. Jessica turned from the mirror, radiant in her custom Vera Wang gown, her expression changing from joy to confusion when she saw me. "Dad, why are you wearing a hat indoors?" The bridesmaids, sensing tension, made excuses to leave the room, closing the door behind them. "Jessica," I said quietly, "I need to ask you something important, and I need you to tell me the truth. Did you know what Derek planned to do last night?" Her brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" I removed the fedora. Jessica gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Dad, your hair. What happened?" Her shock seemed genuine, her horror unfeigned. Either my daughter was an exceptional actress, or she truly had no idea what Derek had done. "After you gave me that drink last night, and I fell asleep, Derek came to the apartment. He drugged me and shaved my head. Security cameras caught him entering and leaving." Jessica sank into a chair, her wedding dress pooling around her. "No," she whispered. "He wouldn't do that. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," I said, handing her my phone with the security footage queued up. "He also left this note." She watched the video, then read the note, her face growing paler by the second. "Dad, I swear I had no idea. The drink, he told me to give it to you, said it would help you sleep before the big day. I never thought." Tears began to streak her perfect makeup. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay, but the larger part needed her to fully understand what was happening. "Jessica, this is who you're about to marry. A man who would drug your father and humiliate him on your wedding day. A man who sees me as nothing but a bank account to fund his lifestyle." She shook her head vigorously. "No, there has to be an explanation. Derek loves me. We're building a life together. Is that why he's been asking about your inheritance? Planning how to spend it before it's even his?" Her eyes widened slightly. "How did you know about that?" "I overheard him at the rehearsal dinner." "Jessica, I've had Derek investigated. He's not who he claims to be. He has a history of targeting wealthy women." "You had him investigated?" The shock was turning to anger now. "How could you do that?" "Because I love you," I said simply. "Because your mother would have expected me to protect you, even when you can't see the danger yourself." "So what now?" she asked, arms crossed defensively. "You want me to call off the wedding with 300 guests already seated outside?" I sighed heavily. "That's your decision to make. But know this. I've canceled the inheritance transfer we discussed. If you marry him today, you'll be doing it without the $120 million he's expecting." Her expression cycled through shock, anger, and finally, a flicker of uncertainty. "I need to talk to Derek," she said finally. "Jessica, think carefully about." "I need to talk to him," she insisted, standing up. I nodded, replacing my hat. "I'll be waiting outside." As I left the bridal suite, I saw Derek approaching from the opposite direction, handsome in his tuxedo, a smile plastered on his face that faltered when he saw me. "Antonio," he said with forced cheerfulness. "Big day, huh? Why the hat? Bit unorthodox for a wedding." "I think you know exactly why, Derek," I replied coldly. Before he could respond, Jessica appeared in the doorway behind me. "Derek, I need to speak with you. Now. I stepped aside, catching a glimpse of genuine concern on Derek's face as he followed Jessica into the room. The door closed behind them, but even through the heavy wood, their voices soon rose to shouting level, though the words remained indistinct. Michael appeared at my side. How did she take it? She didn't know, I confirmed, but she's still struggling to accept the truth about him. Minutes later, the door flew open and Derek stormed out, his face contorted with rage. He didn't acknowledge either of us as he stalked down the hallway. Jessica appeared in the doorway, mascara streaking her cheeks. He says it was just a prank, she said hollowly. That you're overreacting. That you've always been trying to come between us. And what do you believe? I asked gently. She looked down at the note still clutched in her hand. I don't know what to believe anymore, but we have hundreds of guests waiting. The photographer, the caterers, Jessica, I said, taking her hands. None of that matters compared to making the right decision for your life. She pulled her hands away. The wedding is going forward, Dad. I need more time to figure all this out. My heart sank, but I nodded. I'll be there to walk you down the aisle if that's what you want. It is, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. I left her with her bridesmaids, who rushed back in to repair her makeup. Michael and I took our seats in the front row as guests filed in. I could hear the whispers, see the curious glances at my hat. Derek stood at the altar, composed once more, though he pointedly avoided looking in my direction. The music began, and I met Jessica at the back of the aisle. She took my arm, her grip tighter than usual. Are you sure? I whispered one last time. Just walk, Dad, she said through a forced smile. So I did. I walked my daughter down the aisle toward a man I knew would bring her nothing but pain. I placed her hand in his, catching the smirk that flickered across his face when our eyes met. And then I took my seat, removing my hat only after the ceremony had begun, causing a ripple of gasps and whispers throughout the audience. The ceremony proceeded like a surreal dream. Vows were exchanged, rings placed on fingers, a kiss shared while I sat watching, my heart breaking with each passing moment. When the officiant presented them as Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, the crowd applauded. I remained silent, my hands still. During the reception, I was seated at the family table but noticeably distanced from the bride and groom. Jessica barely looked at me, while Derek made a show of being the perfect, attentive husband. I watched him working the room, charming Jessica's elderly great-aunt, presumably calculating her net worth as they spoke. Michael leaned over to me during the main course. You don't have to go through with the toast, you know. You could just leave now. Deal with the fallout later. I shook my head. No, this needs to be done publicly. If I leave now, he'll twist the narrative, make me the villain. Jessica deserves to know exactly who she married, even if it's minutes too late. As dinner concluded, the wedding planner approached to inform me it was time for the father of the bride toast. I stood, taking the microphone offered to me, and made my way to the center of the room. Once again, I removed my hat, causing a fresh round of uncomfortable murmurs. Derek's face tightened, his arm around Jessica's shoulders, pulling her closer possessively. In that gesture, I saw everything I needed to know about their future together if I didn't intervene now. I tapped the microphone and the room fell silent. For those of you who are surprised by my new look, I began, gesturing to my bald head. Let me assure you, this was not my choice for my daughter's wedding day. A nervous titter ran through the crowd. Jessica's eyes widened in alarm, while Derek's narrowed dangerously. I stand before you today not just as father of the bride, but as a man who has learned a difficult lesson about trust and appearances, one that I feel compelled to share. I took a deep breath, scanning the room. These were our friends, family, business associates, people who had known Jessica since she was a child. They deserved the truth, and so did she. As most of you know, I built my business from nothing. Every dollar I earned came through hard work, integrity, and treating people with respect. These are the values my late wife Amanda and I tried to instill in our daughter. Jessica shifted uncomfortably in her seat, while Derek maintained a frozen smile. When Jessica met Derek, I was initially happy for her. She seemed to have found someone who shared her interests and ambitions. But over time, I noticed troubling changes in my daughter. She became distant, dismissive of the values she was raised with. When I expressed concerns about their relationship, I was told I was old-fashioned, controlling, out of touch. Derek leaned over to whisper something in Jessica's ear. She shook her head slightly, eyes fixed on me. Last night, after Jessica gave me what I now know was a drugged drink, I fell into a deep sleep. While I was unconscious, Derek entered my apartment using Jessica's key and did this to me. I ran a hand over my smooth scalp. He left a note calling me a ridiculous old man and telling me my new role was to be silent, obedient, and irrelevant. Gasps echoed through the room. Jessica's hands covered her mouth in horror, while Derek's face had turned to stone. I have the security footage from my building showing Derek entering and leaving my apartment in the middle of the night. I also have the note. I held up the paper. But more importantly, I have evidence of who Derek Wilson really island. I nodded to Michael, who distributed several folders to key tables around the room. Derek is not from old New England money, as he claims. His father is a mid-level insurance salesman in Rhode Island. The prestigious finance career he boasts about includes being fired from 3 firms for ethical violations. He has over $200,000 in credit card debt and a documented gambling addiction. Derek jumped to his feet. This is slander. Antonio is making this up because he can't stand to lose control of his daughter. Am I? I countered calmly. In those folders are statements from 3 other women, all from wealthy families, all who dated Derek in the past 5 years. Each describes the same pattern: charm, isolation from family, requests for money that were never repaid. People were opening the folders now, murmuring as they read the contents. Jessica remained frozen, her gaze shifting between me and Derek. Most damning of all, I continued, Derek has been planning how to spend Jessica's inheritance before they're even married. At the rehearsal dinner, I overheard him telling his friends about buying property in the Hamptons with, and I quote, money that isn't Antonio's anymore. Jessica turned to Derek, her expression demanding explanation. He ignored her, his face contorted with rage. You were planning to transfer $120 million to us today, Derek said accusingly. Where is it? What have you done? And there it was. The mask completely dropped. His true priorities revealed to everyone present. That's right, Derek. I was going to transfer $120 million to Jessica today as a wedding gift, but after discovering who you really are, I've canceled that transfer. Derek's face went from red to white. You can't do that. It's Jessica's money. Actually, I said calmly, it's my money, earned through decades of honest work, and I will decide how and when it passes to my daughter. I turned to address Jessica directly. I'm sorry to do this on your wedding day, sweetheart, but I couldn't stand by and watch you tie yourself to someone who only wants you for your inheritance, someone who would drug and humiliate your father for a laugh. Jessica stood slowly, her voice barely audible. Is it true, Derek? Did you really do that to my father? Derek scrambled to recover. Baby, it was just a stupid prank that went too far. Your father's blowing it out of proportion because he's jealous of our relationship, of our future together. A prank? I echoed incredulously. Drugging someone and assaulting them while they're unconscious is a prank to you? The note calling me irrelevant was a joke? Show me the note, Jessica demanded, walking toward me. I handed it to her. She read it silently, then read it again. When she looked up, something had changed in her eyes. This is your handwriting, she said to Derek, and these are your exact words when we fought about my father last month. Derek's expression hardened as he realized he was losing control of the situation. So, what if it is? Your father has been trying to control you, control us, from the beginning. He was going to use that money to keep us under his thumb forever. Jessica shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, Dad was right about you. All this time, I defended you, chose you over my own father, and you were just using me to get to his money. Don't be dramatic, Derek sneered. You enjoyed the lifestyle I introduced you to. You were all too happy to spend Daddy's money on designer clothes and luxury vacations. The cruelty in his tone seemed to shock Jessica as much as the words themselves. She recoiled as if slapped. "I want you to leave," she said quietly. "What?" Derek laughed incredulously. "I want you to leave," she repeated, louder this time. "This wedding is over." Derek's face transformed, all pretense of charm evaporating. "You stupid bitch," he hissed, grabbing her arm roughly. "You think I put up with you and your pathetic, new money family for 2 years just to walk away now?" I started forward, but Michael was faster. He and 2 of my longtime business associates were instantly between Derek and Jessica. "Take your hands off her," Michael said, his voice deadly quiet. Derek looked around the room, seeming to finally register the 300 witnesses to his true character. His hand dropped from Jessica's arm. "Fine," he spat. "Keep your money. You deserve each other." As he stormed toward the exit, he paused beside me. "This isn't over, old man," he whispered. "Not by a long shot." "Actually, Derek," I replied calmly, "It Island Security will escort you from the property. Try to contact Jessica or me again, and the restraining order will be the least of your concerns." As if on cue, 2 large security men appeared at Derek's sides, firmly guiding him toward the door. The room erupted in shocked conversation as he disappeared from view. Jessica stood alone in the center of the reception hall, 300 pairs of eyes on her, the beautiful bride abandoned at her own wedding. My heart ached for her humiliation, but I knew it was better than the alternative, a life shackled to a man who saw her as nothing but a meal ticket. I crossed to her side, placing my hat on her hands. "I'm so sorry, Jessica. I never wanted it to happen this way." For a moment she just stared at me. Then without warning, she collapsed against my chest, sobbing uncontrollably. I held her close, feeling her tears soaking through my tuxedo jacket. "Everyone's watching," she choked out between sobs. "Let them watch," I said softly. "They're your friends and family. They love you. No one here will judge you for making the right choice, even at the last minute." Over Jessica's shoulder, I saw Clara, the wedding planner, hovering uncertainly. I nodded to her, and she immediately took charge, announcing that while the ceremony portion of the evening had concluded unexpectedly, guests were welcome to enjoy the dinner, dancing, and open bar as planned. Remarkably, most guests stayed. Some came to offer Jessica words of support or a comforting hug. Others simply enjoyed the excellent food and top-shelf liquor, treating the event as an extremely expensive but entertaining dinner party. A few of Derek's friends and family slipped away, looking embarrassed or angry depending on whether they had been in on his schemes. As the initial shock subsided, Jessica pulled back from my embrace. "Dad, I don't know what to say. You were right about everything, and I was horrible to you." "You weren't horrible," I said gently. "You were in love, or what you thought was love. Derek was very good at his deception, but I chose him over you. I let him change me into someone I don't even recognize anymore." I took her hands in mine. "The important thing is that you see it now, before it's too late. The marriage can be annulled. Derek will be out of our lives. We can start fresh." Jessica nodded slowly, then reached up to touch my smooth head. "I'm so sorry about your hair. I had no idea he would do something so cruel." I managed a small smile. "It'll grow back. And in the meantime, I have a pretty snazzy hat." She laughed through her tears, a sound I hadn't heard in far too long. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Now," I said, "we salvage what we can of this very expensive party. And tomorrow, we begin rebuilding." Jessica looked around at the reception, the flowers, the cake, the band waiting to play the first dance that would never happen. "Actually," she said with newfound resolve, "I have a better idea." The next few hours unfolded in ways I never could have imagined. Jessica, showing a strength of character I feared had been lost, took the microphone and addressed her guests directly. "First, I want to thank everyone for staying," she began, her voice shaky but determined. "Today hasn't gone as planned, to put it mildly, but I realize now that while this was supposed to be a wedding, what it's really become is a celebration of truth and family." She looked over at me, tears glistening in her eyes. "My father tried to warn me about Derek, and I refused to listen. I chose a man who drugged my father and assaulted him on what should have been one of the happiest days of our lives. I can never fully apologize for that betrayal, but I can try to make something positive come from this disaster. Jessica gestured to the elaborate decorations surrounding us. We have an incredible venue, amazing food, and a fantastic band. Rather than let it all go to waste, I propose we transform this wedding reception into a fundraiser. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd. My father built his success from nothing. Jessica continued. He never forgot what it was like to struggle. So tonight, I'm asking everyone to donate what you would have spent on a wedding gift to the Amanda Rossi Foundation, which supports women rebuilding their lives after escaping abusive relationships. The foundation had been established after my wife's death, named in her honor, though addressing a cause different from the cancer that took her. It had been one of Jessica's passions before she met Derek. Additionally, Jessica added, I'll be auctioning off my wedding dress, with all proceeds going to the foundation. Consider it my first step toward becoming the woman my parents raised me to be, rather than the person Derek tried to mold me into. The room erupted in applause. What had been an awkward, uncomfortable gathering suddenly transformed into something purposeful and even joyful. People began writing checks, making pledges, offering support. The band started playing, not romantic, slow songs, but upbeat classics that brought people to the dance floor. I watched in amazement as my daughter worked the room, thanking guests, accepting condolences but deflecting pity. In the midst of what should have been her greatest humiliation, she found a way to reclaim her dignity and her values. Around 9 p.m., as the impromptu fundraiser was in full swing, a commotion at the entrance caught my attention. Derek had returned, clearly intoxicated and belligerent. The security guards were blocking his entry, but he was shouting loud enough for his voice to carry into the reception hall. I want to talk to my wife, he bellowed. You can't keep me out of my own wedding. Jessica tensed beside me. I should handle this, she said. We'll handle it together, I replied firmly. As we approached the entrance, Derek's face contorted with rage. There she is. Jessica, tell these goons to let me in. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, Derek, Jessica said calmly. The wedding is over. We're over. Because your father poisoned you against me? Derek sneered. After everything I did to make you someone worthwhile, you were nothing when I met you. A daddy's girl with no style, no connections. I stepped forward, placing myself slightly in front of Jessica. That's enough, Derek. You've been asked to leave. Derek's bloodshot eyes fixed on me. This is all your fault, old man. You couldn't stand that she chose me over you. Had to ruin everything with your money and your investigations. You ruined everything yourself, I replied evenly. When you decided to drug me and shave my head. When you revealed your true character to everyone present. Derek lunged forward suddenly, his fist connecting with my jaw before the security guards could restrain him. I staggered back, more from surprise than pain. At 67, I was no longer the street fighter of my youth, but I was still solid. Jessica gasped. Did you just hit my father? Have you completely lost your mind? Derek struggled against the guards, holding him. He deserved it, acting so superior when he came from nothing. At least I come from good family, even if we don't have his kind of money. Good family? Jessica laughed incredulously. Good family doesn't raise someone who would drug an old man and assault him while he's unconscious. Good family doesn't produce someone who marries a woman for her money. Like you're so innocent, Derek spat. You knew exactly what this relationship was about. The shopping sprees, the vacations, the status. You loved every minute of it. Jessica flinched, but held her ground. You're right. I lost myself for a while. I became someone my mother would have been ashamed of. But that ends tonight. She slipped her enormous diamond engagement ring off her finger and held it out to him. I believe this belongs with you. Derek made no move to take it, still restrained by security. Keep it. Sell it. I don't care. But this isn't over, Jessica. You'll regret this humiliation. The only thing I regret is not listening to my father sooner, Jessica replied. Now please leave before we have you arrested for assault. Derek's eyes darted between us, calculation visible even through his drunken haze. Finally, he stopped struggling against the guards. Fine. I'm going. But don't think you've won, Antonio. A man like you always has enemies, people who'd be very interested in certain details about your business practices over the years. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Are you threatening me, Derek? Because I assure you, my business can withstand any scrutiny. Can your reputation survive what I could reveal about you? The gambling debts, the women you've conned. Think carefully before you make an enemy of me. Something in my tone must have penetrated his alcohol-fueled bravado. His face paled slightly. Get him out of here, I told the security guards. Make sure he leaves the property entirely. As they escorted Derek away, he continued shouting threats and obscenities until the doors closed behind him, mercifully muffling his voice. Jessica sagged against me. I'm so sorry, Dad. Your face is bruising already. I touched my jaw gingerly. It's nothing. I've had worse in business negotiations in the old days. She smiled weakly. Is it awful that part of me still wants to go after him? To make sure he's okay? That's not awful, sweetheart. That's human. You loved him, or the person you thought he was. Those feelings don't disappear instantly. We returned to the reception, where concerned guests pretended not to notice my developing bruise or Jessica's renewed tears. Michael immediately appeared with an ice pack for my jaw. That could have gone worse, he observed dryly. It could have gone better too, I replied, wincing as I applied the ice. As the adrenaline of the confrontation faded, the emotional and physical toll of the day began to catch up with me. Jessica must have noticed, because she touched my arm gently. Dad, you should go home and rest. This has been traumatic for both of us, but especially you. I'm not leaving you to handle this alone, I protested. I'm not alone, she said, gesturing to the room full of supportive faces, and honestly, I think I need some space to process everything that's happened. Michael can drive you home, and we'll talk tomorrow. I hesitated, but recognized the wisdom in her suggestion. If you're sure, I'm sure, she said firmly. And Dad, thank you for saving me from making the biggest mistake of my life, even when I fought you every step of the way. I hugged her tightly, this precious daughter who had found her way back to herself in the most painful way possible. I love you, Jessica. Nothing will ever change that. I love you too, Dad, she whispered. More than I've shown lately. Michael drove me home in silence, both of us processing the day's events. In my apartment, evidence of Derek's violation still lingered, silver hair clippings not fully cleaned up. The bathroom where I'd discovered my reflection forever changed in my memory. What now? Michael asked as I sank heavily onto my sofa. Now we make sure Derek can't hurt Jessica again, I said. I'll have Harold start the legal process tomorrow. Annulment, restraining orders, whatever it takes. And what about you and Jessica? I sighed, removing my hat and running a hand over my smooth scalp. That's up to her. I've done what I can. The rest is her choice. Michael nodded, understanding as always. For what it's worth, Antonio, I think today was a turning point. Jessica saw Derek's true colors in a way no amount of telling could have accomplished. At what cost, though? I wondered aloud. Her public humiliation? My assault? At whatever cost was necessary, Michael said firmly. Amanda would have paid it gladly to protect her daughter, and so would you. The mention of my late wife brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Amanda would have seen through Derek in minutes. Yes, Michael agreed. But Jessica has your stubbornness, not Amanda's intuition. She needed to see the truth for herself. After Michael left, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror again, really studying my new appearance for the first time. Without the shock clouding my perception, I could see that while different, the bald look wasn't as terrible as I'd initially thought. My features were strong, my eyes still bright. I was still me, just with a new exterior. In a strange way, what Derek had intended as humiliation had instead stripped away something superficial to reveal something stronger underneath. Perhaps the same would prove true for Jessica. The painful removal of Derek's influence, revealing the strong, compassionate woman I knew she could be. With that thought providing some comfort, I finally allowed myself to rest, exhausted from one of the most difficult days of my life. The weeks following what Jessica ruefully began calling the non-wedding were some of the most difficult and ultimately rewarding of my life. The physical changes were the easiest to address, ironically. After careful consideration, I decided to maintain my new bald appearance, though I allowed my eyebrows to grow back naturally. As Michael had suggested, I could indeed pull off the look, especially with my collection of fedoras that rapidly expanded from one emergency purchase to a dozen carefully selected hats. The emotional landscape was far more complicated to navigate. Jessica moved back into my penthouse temporarily, while she sorted out her life. The first few days were awkward, both of us walking on eggshells, afraid to disturb the fragile peace between us. On the third night, as we sat picking at our dinner in uncomfortable silence, Jessica finally broke. "Dad, I can't stand this anymore. Please yell at me. Tell me how stupid I was. Anything but this careful politeness." I set down my fork. "I'm not going to yell at you, Jessica. You're a grown woman who made a mistake you're already paying for. A mistake that hurt you physically and emotionally," she insisted. "A mistake that cost you millions in wedding expenses and legal fees. Money is replaceable," I said simply. "You are not." Jessica burst into tears, deep, heaving sobs that seemed to come from her very core. I moved to her side, holding her as she cried, as I had when she was a little girl with skinned knees or teenage heartbreaks. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," she choked out between sobs. "Forgiveness isn't about deserving," I told her, stroking her hair. "It's about healing, both for the one who forgives and the one who is forgiven." That conversation marked a turning point. We began seeing Dr. Matthews, a family therapist recommended by Harold, who specialized in helping families recover from trauma and betrayal. At first, Jessica was reluctant, viewing therapy as an admission of weakness, but she quickly came to value the safe space to express her complicated feelings. "I'm angry at Derek, obviously," she admitted during one session. "But I'm also angry at myself for being so easily manipulated, for turning into someone I don't recognize. And sometimes, I'm even angry at you, Dad, for being right all along." Dr. Matthews helped us understand that all these feelings were natural parts of the healing process. She guided us through difficult conversations about Jessica's insecurities that had made her vulnerable to Derek's manipulation, and my tendency to try to control situations rather than trust Jessica's judgment. "You both experienced a significant betrayal," Dr. Matthews explained. "Jessica by her fiancé, and Antonio by both Derek and, to some extent, by Jessica. Rebuilding trust takes time and consistent effort from both parties. While we worked on our relationship, the practical aftermath of the non-wedding required attention too. Harold, my attorney, moved swiftly to file for annulment, arguing that Derek's fraudulent intentions and the drugging incident constituted grounds for invalidating the marriage entirely. Fortunately, no consummation occurred after the ceremony, Harold explained during a meeting in my office, and we have ample evidence of Derek's deceptive practices leading up to the marriage. The judge is sympathetic to our position. Jessica, who had begun shadowing me at work as part of her process of rediscovering herself, asked, "What about the restraining order? Is that moving forward too?" Harold nodded. "We've filed for temporary orders already, and given the physical assault against your father, I don't anticipate any issues making them permanent." Derek himself had gone uncharacteristically quiet after his drunken confrontation at the reception. I'd expected threats, demands for money, attempts to contact Jessica, but there was nothing. According to Thomas, my private investigator who was monitoring the situation, Derek had left New York entirely, returning to Rhode Island to stay with his parents. "Apparently, he's got other problems," Thomas reported. "Some gambling debts came due, and the people he owes aren't as patient as credit card companies. He's keeping his head down." About a month after the wedding, Jessica approached me with an unexpected request. "I want to join the company formally," she said. "Not in some made-up position because I'm your daughter, but starting at an entry level appropriate for my education and experience." I was surprised but pleased. Jessica had shown little interest in Rossi Real Estate Group previously, focusing instead on her art history background. "Are you sure? It's not exactly what you studied for." "I'm sure," she said firmly. "I've been watching you work this past month. What you've built is incredible, Dad. Not just the buildings and the wealth, but the relationships, the respect people have for you. I want to learn from you, to eventually earn my place in the company rather than just inheriting it. And so Jessica began working as an assistant project manager on one of our smaller developments, a mixed-use building in Brooklyn. She arrived early, stayed late, and never once used her connection to me to gain advantages. Her colleagues, initially skeptical, quickly came to respect her work ethic and fresh perspective. I, meanwhile, began the process of restructuring my estate plan with Harold. The previous arrangement, which would have transferred a third of my wealth to Jessica immediately after the wedding, was clearly flawed. I'm thinking a series of smaller trusts, I explained to Harold, released at intervals and tied not just to age but to demonstrated responsibility, and a significant portion dedicated to charitable work through the Amanda Rossi Foundation. A much wiser approach, Harold agreed. And what about the succession plan for the company? Jessica will have the opportunity to earn leadership positions, just like anyone else. If she proves herself capable, she'll eventually take over. If not, we'll find another solution. When I shared these changes with Jessica, she nodded in understanding. It's fair. I need to prove myself worthy of the responsibility. To you and to myself. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, Jessica had established herself as a valuable member of the company, moving from her initial position to heading a small team working on community integration for our developments. She had moved into her own apartment, more modest than the luxury condo she had shared with Derek, but purchased with her own savings and a small loan from me that she insisted on repaying with interest. We still had dinner together twice a week, sometimes at my place, sometimes at hers. During one such dinner, as Jessica served coffee in her cozy new home, she brought up Derek for the first time in months. I heard from Megan that he's engaged again, she said, referring to a mutual acquaintance. Some doctor's daughter from Boston. Apparently, they met only 2 months ago. I watched her carefully for signs of lingering attachment. How do you feel about that? She considered the question seriously, concerned for her, honestly, but not jealous or hurt, if that's what you're wondering. I feel, she searched for the right word, free, like I escaped something that would have destroyed me eventually. I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Your mother would be so proud of you, Jessica, not just for recognizing Derek's true nature eventually, but for how you've rebuilt your life afterward. I think about her a lot lately, Jessica admitted, wondering if I'd have made the same mistakes if she were still here, if I would have recognized the warning signs earlier. We can't know that, I said gently, but I do know she would have loved the woman you're becoming now. A year to the day after the infamous wedding, Jessica and I stood together at Amanda's grave, placing fresh flowers as we did every year on her birthday. The early autumn air held the same crispness as the wedding day, but everything else had changed. I've been thinking about that note Derek left, Jessica said suddenly. The one calling you ridiculous and irrelevant. I nodded, the memory still uncomfortable but no longer painful. What about it? He was so wrong, she said simply. About everything, but especially about you. You're the most relevant person in my life, the example I try to live up to every day. I felt tears threatening, unusual for me outside of this annual visit to Amanda's grave. That means everything to me, Jessica. As we walked back to the car, Jessica linked her arm through mine. You know what's ironic? Derek thought he was humiliating you by shaving your head, but it actually suits you. You look distinguished, powerful. I laughed. That's what Michael said that day. I think he was just trying to make me feel better. No, he was right, Jessica insisted. Sometimes losing something you thought was essential, like hair, or a relationship, or certain ideas about yourself, is actually the thing that helps you find who you truly are. Her words struck me as profoundly wise, especially coming from someone who had been through such a difficult journey of self-discovery. When did you get so philosophical? I teased. I had a good teacher, she replied, smiling up at me. As we drove home, I reflected on the extraordinary year behind us. What had begun as one of the worst days of my life had set in motion a transformation that strengthened both of us in ways I could never have anticipated. Derek had intended to humiliate me, to drive a permanent wedge between Jessica and me, to take my money and my dignity. Instead, his cruelty had ultimately brought my daughter back to me, stronger and wiser than before. I glanced at my reflection in the car window, the now familiar bald head that had initially seemed like such a catastrophe. The exterior had changed, but what mattered, what had always mattered, was intact within, the values and love that defined who I truly was. "Dad?" Jessica's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "I've been meaning to ask you something. The Amanda Rossi Foundation is doing amazing work, but I think we could do more. I've been developing a program specifically for young women vulnerable to financial manipulation, teaching them to recognize the warning signs I missed. Would you consider funding it as a new initiative?" I smiled, feeling Amanda's presence between us, guiding us toward using our painful experience to help others. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Jessica. Your mother would have loved it." And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that despite everything, despite the public humiliation and physical assault, despite the betrayal and heartbreak, I wouldn't change what happened. The path had been painful, but it had led us exactly where we needed to be. What's your story about trust and betrayal? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love, even when they didn't want your protection? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your experiences. Don't forget to like this video if you found it meaningful. Subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most important growth. Thank you for spending this time with me. And remember, it's never too late to rebuild trust and find healing after betrayal.